spontaneously. Adebi, whom I had recruited, who was Oramah's boss, hesitated in coming for reasons that he told me, reasons that I knew. We gave him time to adjust those reasons, but in the end, he didn't come. And we then asked Oramah to take over what was the office of the head of research. And from there, Oramah unleashed his capacity for innovation. And I call it an idea based on certain products. The next day, he will introduce an angle and modify it and add all sorts of elements, as demonstrated by the staff who spoke again and again all through this afternoon session. For example, when he had now become the president of Afrexim Bank, look at some of the innovations that have happened. FEDA, for example, was something that was there before because we had a venture capital scheme, but he introduced a spin on it. We had our export development program deepened, and several other innovation products that were brought. Point. If you want to facilitate our institution to grow your career, innovate. Another attribute I distilled from the Oramah experience is his entrepreneurial capacity and the pursuit of iconic projects. When he invited us to consider, I think now, the 6th plan, he had 35 products. I leave it to you. Imagine for a while that you went to a restaurant and they gave you the menu book and it has 35 meals in it. That is the kind of impression. Somebody said it was, I don't know what it's now, John Louis or somebody said, when he told him, this is over-optimistic. Or you'll be talking over his head because he's not going to listen to you because he's going to go on. Entrepreneurial, 35 products. I told him, look, our principle is to leave every president as we would leave our new president, incoming president, Elombe, to pursue his mission. But I told him, it looks like this is excessive. 35 products. But as events will show, virtually all of them have been implemented. Virtually all of them have been implemented. And none has been a problem. And I said, well, maybe we shouldn't have hesitated. I looked at one thing, one of the juggling episodes. Chidelo was referring to, he will put 35 balls in the air and none will fall off. He will catch them. So he implemented everything. So he then went into iconic projects. I want to point out that we had agreed from John Louis to that every president should define what he thinks will stand out as his own inclination, what he stood for. From Afrexim Bank, I had been interested in export development, and I brought BISU for that purpose. Of course, Oramah contributed. John Louis had said he would do medical tourism. It is true that Oramah's ill health accelerated it and gave it a color. John Lewis medical tourism found expression in the African Medical Center of Excellence. So it was partially John Lewis' product and partially OK's product in implementing what was John Lewis' dream. He continued strategic planning, which was supposed to be the practice of our bank. Strategic planning is not a very popular practice because people criticize it because planning is not usually implemented. But you go and look at what Oramah has done. Up to the minute, with a minute to go, he's still implementing. He was a master of plan implementation. Our culture of cumulative growth and strong corporate culture embedded. The cumulative growth for us means that every president will add on to what the previous presidents have done, not to dismantle what had been done before. Cumulative growth. Oramah has maintained that. Let me go to the final point because Mark is pressurizing. That final point is about the personal character that we wanted in our staff, and that is the attribute of humility. Humility as power. The way it arose is that we interviewed some candidates, and one of the candidates told us that he had worked in a period of about 2 years. He had worked in nearly a dozen organizations. And when I asked him, why do you move so rapid, so moving from organization to organization? No, I'm not a nomad, but whenever something happens, I have to. So I asked John Louis after the interview, what should we be seeking in the men that we want to work with us? I was hoping he would say something like, oh, staff must be experts in treasury. Oh, they must be experts in credit. Oh, they must be experts in risk management, or some other esoteric banking practice. Instead, we should seek humility. It came to me as a shock. We should seek humility. We talked about it. It was only then I noticed humility in Oramah. I had gone round the world with him. There was nowhere we didn't go together. He was my special assistant. America, Latin America, all of Africa, part of Asia, Hong Kong and everywhere. So humble. Notice what has happened recently. Nokwa appointed him BK Oramah. When he came back, he said he was appointed, he was given the title of man of the people. I looked at it, I thought that was the greatest meaning of BK Oramah. It was a dramatization of a humility. My proposal, our team humility as power. Being audacious, being prolific writing, having courage, being an innovation machine, entrepreneurial, culture of accumulation, humility. Those are the attributes I see as the primary in the success. Gabaruka, a friend of the bank, said, leadership is what happens after you leave. Leadership is what happens after you leave. I left. I was confident that the race will not falter because of John Louis and because of Oramah. And I said to him, Oramah will play Oramah to you. So you play Eduardo now that you are president. Then John Louis left. Oramah became the president. My fear was, who was going to be Oramah to Oramah? Who was going to be the prolific writer? The team came, thankfully. Leadership is what happens after you leave. I have no doubt in my mind that when Oramah leaves, thankfully, our brother will continue winning the race. I have thought about the Oramah experience as I prepared this testimonial. Because 1992, just about 2 months after I had reluctantly taken Oramah, Professor Oshutogu comes as Oliver Twist. He brings a girl, he brings a lady. And they say, well, you know that it's not possible. I'm just trying to accommodate that time Oramah was still evolving. Now that I know what Oramah is, I have wondered, what would have happened if we had another Oramah? Perhaps we will have an impossible phenomenon to imagine. Can you imagine this Oramah plus another Oramah like him? And what would have happened to our bank? Maybe. As I wind up, I wish our brother well. I thank Oke for the attributes that he has made clear to us. And I would ask you to join me in really, really applauding him. To do so, can I invite you to kindly get up? Only Oramah and Mrs. Oramah and Professor Oshutogu should sit down while we give a truly great applause. Hep, hep, hep! Hep, hep, hep!
Hooray!
Hep, hep, hep! Thank you, okay? God bless you.
Thank you, the pioneer president of Afrexim Bank, Christopher Edodu there, giving us a comprehensive run-through as to how the great Benedict Oramah's career trajectory came through. Now, the biggest show in town when it comes to the African Union and its progress has to be in trade, intra-Africa trade. The African Continental Free Trade Area holds the hopes and dreams of more than 1 billion Africans, most of them young. We are very delighted to have with us, and I'll call to the stage now, please, a warm round of applause for some words from the Secretary General of the AFCFTA Secretariat, His Excellency Wamkele Mene.
Your Excellency, President Macky Sall, former President of the Republic of Senegal, former Chairperson of the African Union, Your Excellency, President Mahamadou Issoufou, former President of Niger, leader of the AFCFTA, former President, Vice President of the Federal Republic, Democratic Republic of Nigeria, my senior brother, Professor Benedict Oramah, Mrs. Oramah and the family, the incoming President, Dr. George Lombi, my senior sister, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Excellency Salma Haddadi, senior management of the bank. It is really a pleasure to be here for this very important occasion today. Across the length and breadth of our continent, we celebrate those who have had an impact in us, in our lives, and honor them long after they are gone, in some cases when they are ancestors. And so it is remarkable today that Afreximbank has convened us to celebrate the success, the achievement of my senior brother. What many of you may not know is that there are two people that have had a profound impact during my tenure as your servant as Secretary General. First, it is my boss, that is my wife, who has been a very strong pillar of support. And then Professor Oramah, who has supported me personally and the institution, the AFCFTA Secretariat, from the very beginning. I received a letter from him when I was elected to this position, and the letter congratulated me and offered us support. It was the very first time that I saw $10 million written in a letter to me when I received that letter of support from President Oramah stating that Afreximbank will commit up to $10 million to support the establishment of a strong institution to achieve a long-standing objective of market and economic integration in our continent. And so building on the very strong legacy that Presidents Edorju and Jean-Louis Ekra, a very strong foundation, Professor Oramah, which has resulted in very concrete support for many businesses, large corporations in Africa, small medium enterprises, as well as our industrial giants that we heard about earlier today, and the creative industry. You may be aware that our continent has 42 currencies. You may also be aware that when, as Africans, we want to trade amongst one another, we resort to a third currency. However, since the establishment of the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, we as Africans should stand proud and tall that today we are able to trade in our local currencies, reducing the cost of trade in Africa. The Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, as we speak, is a reality. And I want to congratulate once again Professor Oramah for the tenacity and the vision to ensure that it does indeed become a reality. We have also, for the very first time, established, through his leadership, the AfCFTA Adjustment Fund, which has been capitalized by a seed amount of $1 billion. And we have committed to raise up to $10 billion to ensure that as we implement the AfCFTA, no country is left behind. Recently, in Algeria, we co-convened the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, which you will recall was a commitment that was made in May 1963, but which unfortunately evaded us for many decades until Professor Oramah made it a reality in 2018. In Algiers, over $70 billion worth of trade deals and transactions were concluded, and mainly benefiting small, medium enterprises and youthful entrepreneurs. The African Union, the AfCFTA Secretariat, we do not have a balance sheet, a capital amount. We're not intended to. What we do have, however, is political authority. And we must defend our institutions. We must defend those who lead our institutions. When our leaders, such as Professor Oramah, assert their economic independence and the economic liberalization and liberation of our continent, because they are courageous, there will, of course, be consequences. And so, do not be surprised when you read about downgrading by those institutions that are outside of our continent. If you fight a pre-existing system that subjugates our continent, not everybody will appreciate that. And so, when Professor Oramah reminds us, and I want to quote him, and he himself quotes the words of Benjamin Burumbo, I quote, "Each time I want to fight for African rights, I use only one hand because the other hand is busy trying to keep away Africans that are fighting me," end quote. The African Union, the AfCFTA Secretariat, we must use our political force to defend our institutions, to defend our industrialists, and to ensure that those African institutions that deploy African capital to advance on this long-standing objective of economic freedom of our continent, not only do they deserve our support, they deserve the African Union to stand shoulder to shoulder with them in support of our common objectives. And so I want to pay tribute today to you, my senior brother, for your courage. I want to also pray, more importantly, pay tribute to Mrs. Oramah and the family for, as others have said, sharing him with us as a continent. The final observation I would make is this, that President Mandela said, "It all seems impossible until it is done." Last month, when you hosted Professor Oramah at the AfCFTA Secretariat for his farewell speech, a journalist asked him, what is it that 10 years ago you would have wished you would have done differently? And his response was, I have done everything that I said I would do 10 years ago. That, my friends, is what President Mandela was talking about when he said, "It all seems impossible until it is done." And so your enduring legacy is that Africa must finance her own development, that Africa must finance her own industrial innovation, and must finance her own private sector so that we can be globally competitive and create jobs for millions and millions of young people. I want to assure my senior brother, incoming President George Elombi, that you have our full support as you take up this immense challenge. And I dare say that you also have the support of the African Union. We will stand with you. We will defend all of the gains that have been made since President Edordu, President Ekra, and now soon to be outgoing President Oramah. Given the state of the world, as Africans, we do not have a choice but to build our own domestic market, to build our own innovation and competitiveness so that in the medium to long term, we are able to navigate this very difficult time. And so I want to thank all of you very much for your attention, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to celebrate this African giant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General of the AFCFTA, His Excellency Wamkele Mene. Now, for the last 10 years, the burden that you've had, or the responsibility and pride, has been not just as President, Professor Oramah, but also as Chairman of the Board of Afreximbank. And I know the board just met in your final meeting yesterday and the day before. So it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the board. Representing Class C shareholders is Madame Yu Wen. Representing Class B shareholders, Mr. Victor Nembele-Sini Silu, I think he's over there. And I want to take a few words, just 30 seconds, from the gentleman representing Class A shareholders, Governor Denny Kalialia. So, Denny, if you are here, there you are. Give him a round of applause, please.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Allow me to ride on the protocols that have already been established in the interest of time. Indeed, the board had the last meeting yesterday, marking the long and very successful career of Professor Oramah. Now, it's always a challenge to pick who will speak for the board, because we do have senior colleagues who have been on the board longer than I have. Then there are those who are chairpersons of the different committees, like the REMCO. But I have been given the rare honor and the privilege to stand before you to share a few words. Perhaps it's because when Professor Oramah was inaugurated in 2015, I happened to have had the privilege of serving as the acting chairperson of the AGM, and has the distinct honor of ushering him in and in bidding farewell to President Ekra in Lusaka, Zambia. At the time, I must confess, I didn't know much about Afreximbank. It was just coming in the block. Least did I know that fast forward to 10 years now later, it will be such a big institution, more or less becoming a household name on the continent. Now, as he took the reins of the organization, I had the privilege also accompanying them in the different annual meetings. Until in 2019, I formally became a member of the board. So I can, from that perspective, share a few thoughts. But I'll spare you because much of the accolades or the achievements that Professor Oramah has made over the years have been spoken to, and eloquently so. All I can say is that as a board, we are very proud to have been associated with his leadership. The board has stayed very solidly behind the man and his team, the management. They have very innovative ideas such that at times as board members, we are trailing behind. But I would like to believe that the results that have been achieved speak to the fact that the board has been very supportive. He is a tireless man. His work schedule, I don't know who runs such a schedule, because it doesn't matter what time of the day, what time of the night. If there's an issue to be dealt with, he will be there. And he is very communicative. True leadership in the board allows everybody to feel part of the decision that is made. So nobody is left behind in the decision. If a board member raises a simple question, he takes it upon himself to explain or seek answers so that we resolve the problem. So the problem doesn't hang around. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are witnesses of an era, a passing of an era in Professor Oramah. I must also express our sincere gratitude to the family, in particular the wife, the children, for lending us Professor Oramah, the bank, the continent, and the world at large. Now, as we welcome George to this institution as a leader, I think it takes at a time when there are so many tensions in the globe. But more importantly for the bank, I think it has become a force to reckon with. And as a result, I think there's a lot of political economy issues that you have to deal with, quite apart from leading the institution. But you can count on the support of the board that will want to take the bank to a higher position, so that when we remember you to 10 years hence, it will be a much bigger institution. The bank steps in where others move out. So that is very challenging. So thank you very much, Professor Oramah. We wish you all the very best in your next station in life. We hope you now have some time with the family, which you didn't have over the 10 years that you have been president of the organization. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, when we talk about Africa, there are a lot of things that we hear a lot of times. The median age is 19 years old, that we have the youngest population, that we're blessed by God. A lot of the growth that happens in Africa will happen in cities and will happen in subnational regions. Often we talk about federal governments all the time, but often those cities, those states are closer to the people when it comes to making transformational change. So I want to call on a gentleman who maybe would represent us to look at how Afreximbank's relationship with subnational governments, in this case, it's the great state of Ogun State in Nigeria. And we're so pleased to have with us, and please give him a round of applause as he takes the stage, the executive governor of Ogun State, Nigeria, His Excellency Dapo Abiodun.
My brother, President Benedict Oramah and his beautiful wife, the President-designate, George Lumbi, beautiful wife, former President of the bank, former President Macky Sall of Senegal, former President Youssouf of Niger, former Vice President Madi Sambo, President Iko Dangote, Secretary General Mankele, Aigi Mokwede, Access Bank, Dr. Diji Adeleke, former SP Bukola Saraki, former Governor Fayemi, former SGF Boss Mustafa, Wale Tinubu, Group CEO, Wando Holdings, Segun Alebioshu, First Bank, and all other very eminent and distinguished entrepreneurs and personalities, members of the board, and the Afrexim family here today, celebrating this phenomenon, Professor Benedict Oramah. It's indeed an honor for me to speak here, to join all of us in thanking God for providing you, Prof, a platform, the Afrexim platform that has allowed you to envision, turning them to success stories, turning vision into execution. There are people who have visions, but no platforms. There are people who have platforms, but no vision. We celebrate Oramah the intellectual, Oramah the brave, bold, and audacious, Oramah the inspirational banker, and Oramah the solution, yet very humble. This man, in my own words, has been largely responsible for the economic emancipation of the African continent, has now moved to the Caribbean. I like to refer to myself or my state as Oramah or Afrexim's biggest champions. Ogun State is the industrial capital of Nigeria, for those that do not know. When I assumed office on the 29th of May 2019, our state GDP was about a meager 3.8 trillion naira. That was about 2.5 billion US dollars. Prof called me and said, I'll be establishing the first African Quality Assurance Center in your state. This center is meant to ensure the quality of produce and export out of Nigeria. And it has drastically increased the volume of exports out of Nigeria because of the quality assurance. I remember calling him one evening and asking him that I'd like to establish a special agro-processing zone in my state. He took his time talking me through what it truly means to establish such a zone, which is, of course, an industrial park, how it works, and gave me a catalog of all the successful zones on the continent. Later, he called me up and invited me to Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, to have a look at how the successful zones have truly worked, so I can better appreciate their operations and their impact. This was indeed a very insightful and profound experience for me. From Ethiopia,